All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol, and we are going to do an archery setup and rifle setup centric Q&A today. It's an interesting time to do this because I'm not 100% done with either setup, but I'm about, I'd say, 85% done. So I know everything that I'm going to use. I've put a lot of thought and intention behind that. I have most of the things set up and purchased and put together, and just really waiting for a couple of the final pieces. But I thought one of the benefits about this is, who knows, maybe there's some good feedback for people for me to look at a couple different options. I'm pretty set on everything that I'm going with, but there's always room for, dialogue and improvement. One thing that I want to get out of the way, well, before I dig into that, it's 4:30 in the morning right now, and I'm fairly certain I just came down with whatever death flu my daughter just had for a week, because I had cold chills all night, and I woke up and my body's aching and I feel like just a bag of dog poo. But we're gonna crush this thing out anyways. I think I'm well enough to sit here and talk into a camera. So if I ramble, then I'd like to say you could blame me being sick, but if for any of you who've listened to my podcast long enough, I don't think me rambling needs any excuse. I think that's more like my MO than it would be an oddity. Anyways, get that out of the way. I was excited to do this podcast, and I'm really feeling motivated these days. And so I didn't want to miss a week and just throw up a review. I wanted to get like a legit podcast out for you guys. So the note I was going to make, I am not interested in having dogmatic conversations about caliber choice, arrow weight, FOC, bullet composition, or any related topic. I think there are many good systems out there. And if you choose a system, stick with it, and become proficient with it, I think you can become a killing machine 100 different ways when it comes to archery and rifle setups. A lot of what I've done this year is because what I do is review gear and do things, so it's like I have to change things up sometime. There's absolutely nothing wrong with my archery setup last year. Nothing wrong with my bow, nothing wrong with my arrows, maybe some room for improvement here or there, but overall, very successful setup. So why would I change it? It's because this is what I do. And so I will tell you what I'm doing. And if you have some feedback or questions, great. If you disagree, great. But I'm not going to get into some big argument about it. So you can save your breath. If you're planning on sending me some 2-page long email while you think I'm doing the wrong thing, just save your time. All right. I do things so I can test them. I can observe the results. I can look at the data and evidence, and then I can make up my own mind afterwards. And a lot of what I'm doing this year is somewhat new to me and based on other people's opinions and data that they have gathered. It seems like a good idea, but the only way I will ever be confident that's a good idea is for me to do the research myself. So that's what this year is about. But as far as interesting conversations and like that, I'm like, let's have those all day long. What I don't want is just this like die on a hill, 30 cal till death, or like, listen, if that's what you want to shoot, go shoot. I don't care. But if you're curious and you want to have an interesting dialogue, let's get into that. Okay. Now, the marketing BS. I will get through this very quickly because I'm sure most of you already know what's going on. My Forged 2025 drop is live. The new Forged boxers are flying off the shelves. I never anticipated this demand. I am almost out of stock. More, I just talked with my manufacturer last night. More is on the way. Should be, I'm hoping 2 to 3 weeks. I'm still taking orders because I realize people still want to get entered into the spotter, and I'm shipping orders as soon as the new boxers come in if I run out of any sizes. So, and there's 5 new t-shirts, lots of those in stock. New waterproof hunting hat, lots of those in stock. All the old t-shirts, hoodies, lots of those in stock. And every $5 you spend at forgedinthebackcountry.com between now and April 30th will get you 1 entry to win a Swaro ATX 85mm spotting scope. In addition to that, anyone who joins Mindful Reviews between now and April 30th, 2025 will be automatically entered to win a Sig Sauer pair of binoculars, Zulu 10 15 power. Those are valued at $1,700 USD. I quite like them, and they would make a great addition to your arsenal. You just go to mindful-reviews.com. You can join for as little as $5 a month. And as long as you are a member on April 30th, 2025, when I go to do the draw, you are automatically entered to win, and your name will go in the hat. And then finally, outfitting. Bookings have gone kind of nuts lately. I'm just extremely grateful for everybody's support in 2025. I've said this before. I struggled a lot in 2024. Don't know how many people knew that, but it was a very, very hard year for me. And I don't say that with like asking, like feeling sorry for myself or anything. I appreciate a good battle, and I am grateful I came out on the other side of it. But what it does allow me to do is place this year in such direct contrast. Like it feels so good. Like everything is just clicking. I apply effort, I see results. And so that's one reason why I got up at 4 o'clock this morning to make my coffee and come down here and record this podcast, because I am absolutely fired up these days. So thank you again for all the continued support. But on the outfitting note, so any weapon spring black bear hunts, I only have 2 spots left open for this year. It is 1 week. It is the week of June the 8th. I am hoping that I can find 2 guys who want to go together, and I'm willing to cut you a pretty hefty discount if I find that, because all the dudes who have booked so far, and even one lady, a guy and his wife booked, and they seem like everybody just seems like such good people. Like I'm excited to meet every single person who's coming up to hunt. Like their motivations seem to be in the right place. They're like, super interested and very positive and just looking forward to getting out there and have a great outlook about the hunt and what they're hoping to get out of it. And so I'm hoping to find 2 more guys like that are, and if me cutting the price a little bit allows you to get in the door, and maybe you're not the type who can regularly afford a guided hunt, I'd love to be able to make that happen for you and come up to BC and experience, what we've got to offer. So 1 week left, 2 dudes. Now there is the possibility I have a couple weeks through the season where I'm just guiding one-on-one. And that person has booked me for a one-on-one. And if there is a single guy who still wants me to come up, I do have a buddy who's a guide. I could get him to come up for the week, and all 4 of us would be in camp together, but he'd be guiding you, not me. So if that interests you, we can work something like that out as well. But as far as my guiding spots, and I've only got 2 of those single slots open. So basically 2 single slots if you want to be with another guide, and 1 double slot if you want to be with me. And then for archery mule deer in Alberta, I've got 4 slots open, and they take place in the 2nd and 3rd week of October. You want any information about any of those hunts, jay@mindfulhunter.com. All right, that's enough of the salesmanship. Cooper Robinson 85 asks, what equipment, both for rifle and archery, will you not trust or touch again? That is a super interesting question. I'm going to assume he means it's just absolutely failed on me. It's not something that I don't like. Like I prefer a hinge release. I'll probably never use an index figure release again because, well, I just don't like them. But it's not like I don't trust it. It works perfectly fine. It's just not my particular style. I don't know as if I've ever had anything like just completely fail on me. Listen, I learned a big lesson buying my Fierce. I think the whole hybrid custom market is a bit of a scam. I think these markets in between rifles like a Tikka T3X and a Ruger American and a full-on custom don't really offer you anything unless you want some kind of exotic caliber that a more base stock rifle wouldn't offer you. My Fierce setup was like $5,000 Canadian, and it does literally nothing that my Tikka T3X didn't do. And in fact, in some ways it's not as good. Now that I can shoot better, as soon as you shoot, even if you take 2 or 3 minutes between each round, once I get 15, 20 rounds downrange in under, you know, 20, 25 minutes, that carbon barrel starts to walk. Now, that's not a big deal for hunting applications, but like a Tikka steel barrel doesn't do that. You can beat the hell out of those things. It's just going to keep grouping the same way. And so I think they're a waste of money. I think there's a very strong argument for a full custom build with a gunsmith that you trust. You're going to have it set up your way. Like, sure, absolutely. You're going to spend, I don't know, 6 grand kind of to get into that market. You know, the upper limit is kind of infinite. But I think that's a great idea. I think a base stock rifle. I know from what I've been told, the Tikka T3X and the Ruger American, for what they cost, are both fantastic rifles. I had a dude hit me up last night. He's just getting into hunting. I sent him the Tikka. He's like, holy crap, that's expensive. And I kind of had to give myself some context. I mean, it is 1,300 Canadian dollars. I guess that's a lot of money for a rifle for some people. So I sent him a Savage Axis 2 that comes pre-scoped for 600 bucks Canadian. That'd be about 400 bucks American. And listen, you get what you pay for. But also listen, that dude will kill a deer at 150 yards if he wants to kill a deer at 150 yards. It'll work. And I recommended like a very widely available caliber because it'll sell easy and it's easy to shoot. I actually recommended 6.5 Creed. He's primarily worried about deer. Yeah, so will not do hybrid customs anymore. I think they're a waste of money and you're better off just getting a factory stock rifle or full-blown custom. Now, as far as I'm trying to think about like bullet choices, don't really have anything I would never use again. I have my preferences. I guess in the archery world, I'll get into this in more detail, but I dry fired my Matthews about, I don't even remember when it was, back in the fall. Totally my fault. I was testing a bunch of releases and I was so focused on the hand feel of each release that I forgot that I didn't put a bow or an arrow in the bow. Dry fired it. Mutilated the bow. Both cams destroyed. I don't mean lightly bent. I mean like folded in half. Both mods folded in half. String completely blew apart. Even the little yoke splitters have visible damage on them. Like it was, yeah, like $800 in parts later to put that bow back together. I've only dry fired a bow twice. I dry fired my Hoyt Pro Defiant 34 once, and I dry fired this Matthews once. Nothing happened to the Hoyt except for it broke the string. And I still had my factory strings, so I just went back to the bow shop where I bought it from because we'd upgraded the strings. He put my original factory strings back on it, and I went about my business. I was just talking to a buddy yesterday on the phone. He shoots Hoyt. He was just on a hog hunt down in, it was either Texas or Florida, and he dry fired his Hoyt. Nothing happened. He's got an 80-pound Hoyt. Dry fired it, full draw, full release, no arrow. String didn't break. Cams didn't break. Shot bullet holes through paper afterwards. Now listen, do I regret owning a Matthews lift? No, I do not. I love this bow. But anyone who tries to tell you that a Matthews is as durable as a Hoyt is on crack. Like they're not even remotely in the same league. And I think that's it's an interesting data point. I don't think it's the be all and end all. Does it mean I will never buy Matthews again? No, it doesn't. But it just means I have a different expectation out of a Matthews bow than I do out of a Hoyt bow. I do have one more piece of equipment I want to touch on quickly because it was a bit of a revelation I had last night as I was kind of like, working in the bow, the Matthews lift. I'm just in the process of rebuilding right now. And if you'd asked me a week ago the same question, I would have put the Stan Onyx release on it, the hinge. Again, not because there's something inherently flawed with that release, but I've always, for the last almost 5 years now, yeah, probably over 5 years, I've shot the same True Ball Fulcrum Flex. It's a hinge release. It's a really nice release. It feels great. It anchors for me perfectly. The only thing I don't like about it is if you're not paying attention to a hinge, every now and then you can skyfire an arrow, and it happens, once every 6 months to me at the range. Never happened to be hunting, but I started to get this like weird little concern that it would happen to me hunting. And so I've been looking around for hinge releases that have safeties on them and came across the Stan Onyx hinge release. They've got a similar thumb button and a similar, they can put the clicker in there and stuff. I don't like a clicker. But anyways, I shot that thing a bunch in the fall and I could not get the anchor point correct. And I like to feel the string in the corner of my mouth, the string on the tip of my nose, and I like the first and second knuckle of my hand to basically put the rear corner of my jaw, the rear lower corner of my jaw, right at the back, in the little pocket between the knuckles. And that's kind of how I anchor. And that's how I'd always anchored with the Fulcrum Flex. And then two things happened while I was setting up my Matthews. I had several long chats with Kevin Toy, who is a good friend and does an amazing podcast called Knock Talk. He's like my archery guru. Dude knows everything. Super smart guy. And he was talking about the process he uses to set up his peep sight. And I had always just measured the distance on my last peep sight and used that distance again. I've always shot a 33 or 34 inch axle to axle bow. Figured the string angle was the same, didn't need to worry about it. But when he started telling me his process, I was thinking to myself, oh, maybe my peep sight is in the wrong spot. In addition to that, I watched a video by Chris B, whose content I'm liking more and more. I think I kind of slept on this guy for a while, but he's super intellectual. He breaks things down really well. He has nice long videos, kind of like what I do, doesn't need to make them flashy, and just really good educational content. And the dude is like an absolute killer, both kind of competitively and as a hunter. So it's like you believe what he says. And he did this whole video called Your Anchor Doesn't Matter. And I was just like, what kind of nonsense is this? Because I'd always been told that your anchor was extremely important and that lining things up from your sight housing through to your peep, through to your anchor is like the only way to get a consistent shot out of your bow. And the whole premise of this video was that the only thing that matters is that your sight housing is aligned through your peep. And that where your backhand is and where your head is in relation to that peep and that sight housing doesn't actually matter for lining up your shot. And my brain was like kind of breaking into this. I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. But then I thought about it. Like, let's take a laser pointer and point a laser, bring a bow back to full draw in a hooter shooter. Now, take a laser pointer and point it through the peep sight and through the sight housing, like like your 40-meter pin right in the middle. Now, why does it matter where that laser stops at the back or what part of your body that laser hits at the back? Like, as long as your line of sight is going exactly where that laser is going every single time, your hand position doesn't matter. Now, listen, if you're, releasing the arrow in an awkward way, or if you're pushing onto the string with your beard or the side of your face, I mean, these are different things. I'm saying you're not having any, undue contact with the string. Your release process is reliable. You're getting a surprise shot every time. I'm a Joel Turner guy. Again, if you're a command shooter guy, I don't care. That's a great process for guys that works for. It doesn't work for me. And so I found myself when I set my bow up doing that same thing where I was like crouching my face to get into my peep, like crowding the string, I think would be the best way to describe it. Like I've got a big giant melon head and I'm trying to like put it at this weird angle. And then I'm using this stand and it won't go where I want it to go with my anchor. And then I was like, stop right now. You're trying to force a square peg into a round hole. So I stayed back at full draw. And all I did was I got behind my string and I just lowered my face onto the string. Didn't even pay attention to where the release hand was touching my face. Just put it at the natural position so that when I naturally lowered my head down, the tip of my nose touched the tip of the string. And then I looked through the spot on the string that would be right in front of my sight housing if I just naturally leaned down like this. And it was about 3/4 of an inch above where my peep currently was. Like where your peep goes, the strings spread apart. Right where they join back up is about where my eye naturally wanted this peep. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So then I put the bow back in the press. I moved the peep up, kind of line it up so that it's, going to be in good alignment with my D loop and all that kind of stuff. And then I start shooting. And like the more I'm shooting, I'm not worrying about my rear anchor point as much. Like I'm still anchoring to my face, but what I'm actually doing is coming back to full draw, lowering my face, looking through the peep, and then bringing my release to my face wherever it hits my face, just to give me some stability to the bow. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm so comfortable. I don't feel crowded. My shoulders aren't all hunched up. My neck's not all at a weird angle. I'm not forcing a square peg into a round hole. And I have 4 different releases in the other room. I've got a True Ball Abyss, which is a thumb trigger release. I've got a True Ball Sweet Spot Pro hinge release, and I have the Stan Onyx. And I just started rifling through them, like shoot one, shoot another one, shoot one, shoot another one. And it like where my hand was on my face had 0 impact on the point of impact at the target I was shooting at. I felt comfortable. I felt confident with all the releases. And it really started to help me because I'd always evaluated releases on how comfortable they were at my anchor point, not actually like, how quickly they released and if they made any noise or just the hand feel, like, because I was so focused on this anchor point issue that I couldn't even use a release that basically wasn't a fulcrum flex. And so by adjusting how I set my peep and how I anchored, I can use any of these releases. Super easy now. So yeah, maybe the takeaway here is there are very few products that I would say are just garbage and I will never touch again. But there are definitely products that either for correct or incorrect reasons I've come to realize just don't work for me. If I think of anything else, I'll make a little list because I think that's a really interesting question. All right, what arrow setup are you running? I am running Easton 5.0 arrows, 250 spine with the Easton hit inserts and the Easton collars. I'm still undecided on vanes. I have always run the hybrid 2.6-inch vanes from AAE, but Iron Will recently did this big test with a university, and they've kind of come out in conjunction with DCA Custom Arrows, I think they're called. And they have these new saber vanes that my buddy Kevin is going to try this year. And I think I'm finally a good enough archer that I could actually set up a couple different arrows, shoot them, and see how I feel with each of them. I tend to do 4-fletch, not really because the steering helps that much, but because they're easier to nock. I don't have to look for a knock vane or a cock vane. I just, with a 4-fletch arrow, it just goes on. And as long as the vanes are going up to the side, which they have to, you're fine. And I find that a little bit quicker, and I don't mind the extra 7 grains or whatever a vane does. I'm targeting 450 grains for my arrow. And so I will have, I believe it's 125 grain point up front. The insert and collar, maybe together, weigh about 26 or 27 grains. The arrows, I believe, are 8.9 inches per grain. That's why I went with the Easton 5.0s. Without going with a super skinny, like a micro arrow, like a 4mm, which I don't really like. I've had tuning issues with those before, and I don't know, just psychologically, I don't like them. The Easton 5.0 had the lightest grain per inch, and I was at 485 grains last year, and I wanted to be about 450 grains. I have a speed goal. I would like to be shooting low 290s. I haven't shot the bow yet. I just bought the Garmin chronograph and it's in the other room. I'm waiting for my new arrow setup to show up. I got to go pick it up at my post box actually. And as soon as I set those arrows up, I'll get the speed out of my bow. But I'm using a Matthews Lift 33 with the 75-pound mods, and I have a 30-inch draw. So with my back of the napkin math, I should be hitting my desired speed relatively closely. If I was anywhere north of 287, I'm probably going to be happy. I think the bow is pulling back 74 pounds right now. I have noticed every time I've set my Matthews up, I'm always pulling about a pound light with the recommended number of twists in all the cables in the string and having it timed properly and having my draw length at the proper spot. So I've always just been like, whatever, it's a pound. But if I need to squeeze another few feet per second, I could always take a couple twists out of the cable and get it going a little bit faster, but I'm really not that concerned about it. I'm trying to think. I usually use a wrap on my arrow, but I think this time I'll see how I feel with the weight. I don't really care that much about FOC. I've done the math on the current setup and it's 13% FOC. So I'm happy with that. I don't really feel any need to change that. I think a wrap weighs about 12 grains. So I think when I have all my components here, I'll weigh everything. If I'm right at that 450 with the wrap, great, I'll put it on. If I'm like 460 or something, I'll take the wrap off. I just like it for visual purposes. I tend to use a bright yellow wrap and a bright orange vein. It just is a combination that I can see really well when I'm looking for an arrow. So that's really the only purpose that I like it on there. Somebody once told me that it made veins easier to replace because you can use that scraper and just scrape everything off. But I don't really know if that's the case because you can kind of scrape veins off just as easily and then just use a bit of an abrasive to get the rest of the glue off and then a little bit of acetone to like clean up the carbon arrow and Bob's your uncle, you're back in business. And then you don't have to scrape this entire like 5-inch, wrap with all this adhesive off your arrow. So I think that's everything. And I cut my arrows to 30 inches. Now I could theoretically cut them down an inch more and they would still fit in my bow. But I don't like having my broadhead that close to my rest and the throat of my grip. Psychologically, I just I like an inch or two space between the top of my hand and that broadhead, just in case, something goes wrong sometime. Just give me a little bit of room. So I leave that extra inch on there. So 30-inch draw, 30-inch arrow. Collars basically add no additional length. They fit flush to the top of the arrow. And that is my arrow setup for 2025. How often are you practicing with either setup throughout the year? Extremely often. So I have a 3D shoot that I'm going to in Kamloops, and I highly recommend everybody else check it out. Give me a second here, and I'm going to look it up. Yeah, here we go. The Badlands 3D archery shoot, April 26th and 27th, 2025, put on by the Kamloops Target Sports Association. So if you're in BC, I'm going to be there. Lots of the guys I know who shoot are going to be there. I highly recommend you check it out. So let me answer this question kind of in reverse order. I plan on doing a couple 3D shoots this year. It'd be even nice to try and get down to attack. I don't know if my schedule is going to permit that, but I'm trying to put myself in more real world, elevated stress shooting positions, more like shooting situations, because that was a hole in my game last year. I had a couple screw ups that were just from, lack of being used to shooting under pressure. And that's never been an issue for me before. I think I just wasn't thinking as much about it. And now that I'm a little better at most stuff related to hunting, it leaves my brain more time to think. And it's actually causing me to make a couple more mistakes, or not even more mistakes, just different mistakes than I would make before. And so I've got to work on different things. So definitely doing a couple 3D shoots. I definitely want to do an NRL hunter. The philosophy here being I want synthetic shooting situations, artificial shooting situations that replicate the stress of a hunting situation. And so I want to have a couple competitions peppered throughout the year. And then that will drive my practice. Basically, I shoot my bow every day. Worst case scenario, I've got 7 yards in the hall behind me. I sit on a chair, got an archery target at the end of the hall, and I shoot a dozen arrows before bed. So I will shoot my bow every single day. I will do some type of rifle practice at least 3 to 4 times a week. This could just be dry firing. This could be little drills you can do at your home with like little paper targets, like miniature targets, just to replicate certain shooting situations. Getting most of this stuff from the shoot to hunt guys. I'll get into that a little bit more later. And I would like to get out in the field and shoot at least once a week. That might be challenging. It takes me about 2.5 hours to drive to a place where I can shoot 400 yards. And in fact, it would take me at least 2 hours to just even drive to a place where I can shoot 100 yards. And so it's basically like a half day, if not an all day affair for me to go practice. So it does get somewhat challenging. But on the shoot to hunt note, I am going to the week-long shoot to hunt course. So I'm letting these like events drive how much practice I need. If I'm not feeling ready, I will practice more. But I want to get to my local archery range here in Vancouver at least 5 days a week. I want to get back into shooting high volumes of arrows. I kind of had this low volume, high frequency approach for a while that I'm going to mess around with more this year and try and build in more muscle memory. So some type of practice every single day. It is, other than scouting, it's my single biggest priority for training this year. What bow are you running? Top to bottom, parts and specs. Matthews Lift 33, Black Gold, Pro Hunter sight, Hampski Epsilon rest. Right now it still has the Matthews match strings on it, but I do have a set of gas that I may switch up. We'll see. Right now it's shooting phenomenal, so I'm going to leave it alone. It's pulling 75 pounds at 30-inch draw length, and I have Podium Archer stabilizers. Right now I'm running 15 inches out front with 2 additional ounces of weight, and I'm running 10 inches out the back with 4 additional ounces of weight, and I kind of have that angled slightly outwards and down. Still got to play around with that a lot. I literally just put the stabs on the bow last night. Felt really good after doing that. A lot more stabilization than I'm used to, but I'm trying to, like I said, a lot of things are changing this year because I wasn't happy with my shooting performance last year. So one of the things I wanted was more stabilization. And when I look at the archers I trust, I talk with Trail from Go Hunt quite a bit on Instagram. He's always been very helpful. And he uses a ton of stabilization. My buddy Kevin uses a ton of stabilization. Both these guys have 12 to 15 inches out front and 10 to 12 inches out the rear. And they shoot lights out. And I've always said, I want a more agile bow in the backcountry. I don't want it catching on stuff. And then my buddy Kevin had a really interesting point. He's like, listen, man, as soon as you knock an arrow, you got something sticking 24 inches out of the front of your bow. So whether you're sitting in a ground blind or walking around, in the woods with an arrow on, not that you walk around with an arrow on a lot, but you do, your stabilizer ain't going out as far as that. So who cares? And the priority needs to be the quality of the shot. Because what if you're agile and you're running around through the woods and your bow's not getting caught up, and then you got a 60-yard shot on an elk and you blow it because your wobble zone's too big because you don't have enough stabilization on your bow and you're shaking and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's one of the big changes this year. A lot more stabilization. Rifles the same way. I'm going with a heavier setup gun. My last one was about 7 pounds, 9 ounces scoped with a full magazine, and I just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think it needs to be that light. I don't care if my gun ends up being 9 or 10 pounds. I definitely want it being over 8. I'd like, at least 8.5. I want a more stable shooting platform. That's the priority. I'll carry an extra pound. I think this is a bit of a red herring. People chase these ultralight mountain rifles. Unless you are extremely experienced, I think it's a bad idea. Reasoning behind the decision for each component used. I already owned the sights. I have 2 black gold sights. They've worked very well for me. I've never had them come loose or lose axes or I've never had to re-sight them in. They've always been rock solid for me. I already had one with the dovetail, which works perfectly with the bridge lock for the Matthews. I have two versions. I've got the heavy one with micro adjustable pins. I think that's called the Pro Hunter HD. And then I just have the regular Pro Hunter. It's actually the XO version. They sell at S&S Archery. So they've got like four green pins and one yellow pin in the center. And then they use 19 thou pins for the top three and 10 thou pins for the bottom two. So they're a little bit smaller. And I really like that sight picture. I don't like all the different colored pins. It feels a little more cluttered to me. I've always used a 5-pin slider. I think for elk hunting, you need a multi-pin sight. I've never looked at where I was going to kill an elk, ranged it, and then killed the elk at that range. It has always been find something, range a few things, be prepared for 30 through 50. Elk comes in, elk moves around, elk's here, now elk's over there, take my shot. And the only way I can react in those situations is by having a multi-pin sight. I get a slider just because I like it, but I've never killed anything over 60 yards. I've never even used my slider. I just like having the adjustability if I need it. The stabilizers I got from Podium Archer because I really like MFJJ. I watch a ton of his videos, so I wanted to support his brand, and they looked great, and they were super affordable, and they were in stock. I'm trying to think. We can go over to the rifle. For a bipod, I was using a Gunworks Elevate, which I recommend very strongly, but I'm going to be switching to a tripod this year. I think the game plan is to carry a second tripod with me, the new Ridgeline from Asiac, and I'll use probably the Backcountry to do my glassing and filming off of, and I'll use the Ridgeline to shoot off of when I need it, and then put an Arca rail on the front of my Tika. For a scope, I'm using the Maven RS 1.2. I really like this scope. One of the primary reasons I bought it is I really feel like Maven Glass has come a long way. I just reviewed the Maven S3 spotting scope and I'm really impressed with it. And it was a recommendation from people I trust. There wasn't that many scopes that passed the rock slide drop test. I know this is a somewhat controversial methodology. I've talked with Ryan at length. He has invited me to come down and participate in one of the drop tests because he's sick and tired of like listening to everybody chirp. And we're having a conversation. He's like, "Listen, man, you're the non-biased guy. You're the non-sponsored guy. You've built up integrity. Listen, you come down, we'll bring you down. You film anything you want. You put together any video you want. You watch it all, you participate it all, and then you put out a video and you tell us what you think of this testing methodology." So forum's going to be there. We're going to run through the whole thing. We're just kind of working on scheduling right now. Maybe we'll do that as part of the shoot to hunt course because we're already shooting a bunch of rounds. I don't know. But I've talked with Ryan quite a few times over the last 6 months, kind of getting my new system in place. And I am really favorable towards the shoot to hunt system and the kind of advice and the recommendations that they're putting out. And I know not everybody agrees with that, and I don't care. Believe what you believe, shoot what you want to shoot, and get the results you're going to get. I will believe what I want to believe, shoot what I want to shoot, and get the results I get. And after this season, when I have a couple thousand rounds downrange with this system, I will tell you the results of whether or not, it worked. And I'm going to put myself in a situation where I get to kill a few different animals and look at wound channels and do all that kind of stuff. Even if it means going to Texas and like killing some hogs and doing some like pretty easy stuff where you're just going to get to like kill some shit and look at wound channels. And the Maven RS 1.2 passed their drop test. And I did have an issue with my Leupold VX5 HD losing 0. It dropped an MOA. I'm not sure exactly when. I wasn't shooting super often. I take full responsibility for this. I could have been better at sighting it in, but I always go drop a few rounds at the beginning of the season. It seemed like it was on, and then I was in a situation where the gun was not hitting where it should have. And then I went back to my home range where I have like known targets at 400 yards, a bench. And yeah, I was a full MOA out. So at 400 yards, that's a 4 inch drop. And that's unacceptable. And that really, I don't know why that happened. I didn't do anything to the scope. I don't remember like dropping it or banging it. But listen, that's just my anecdotal experience with the Loophole VX5. I lost 1 MOA of elevation maybe over the course of 1 year from when I sighted in last. So that's, yeah. So I wanted a different scope, and Maven RS 1.2 passed the drop test. So I had, a reasonable amount of evidence to believe that I would not, have the same issue. And the Maven was a little bit heavier. I think it's 26 ounces. I think the Leupold is 19. A lot of the research I'm doing is that you got to get up into that 24, 25 ounce region before you get a really reliable scope if you want 15 power. I think the Night Force NXS 2.5 to 10 would be the exception, but I like more than 10 power magnification. So I think you got to be in a scope that's 24, 25 ounces at least in order to get the reliability that you're looking for. Just go look at the big guys. Look at the Collis, look at the Night Force, look at the Trigicon, like these really big trusted brands in reliability, and their scopes are heavier for a reason. And so, yeah, so that's why I'm using that component. And then I will get into the rifle now. So I am using a Tikka T3X stainless light. I am putting a Salmon River Solutions / Unknown Munitions SS Pro brake on it. I'm putting a 4-port brake on the end. I'm Canadian, so we cannot use suppression up here. And that is the only thing that I am doing to that rifle for now, other than putting an Arca rail on it. I'm not going to switch the stock. I'm not going to switch the barrel. I'm not going to do any other upgrades, because the whole point of this endeavor is to prove that with a stock factory rifle and the appropriate amount of training, you can be lethal in a variety of circumstances out to 600-700 yards. And I'm not right now, and I want to be. And so I previously tried to solve that problem with money by buying the Fierce. That failed. So if you're on a similar path, stop right now. You are not going to buy 1,000 yards out of the box, no matter how expensive the rifle is. If you are not willing to go get professional education, and if you don't have a history in this, or you haven't been shooting your whole life, if you're not willing to go get professional education and put thousands of rounds downrange in a variety of circumstances, you are never going to kill anything at 600-700 yards. Now, if you've practiced a lot and you have friends who shoot a lot, and you put yourself in those situations, sure, 100%, absolutely. But I think you can short circuit that. You can shortcut that with some trusted professional education and a lot of training. And then I don't think you need an expensive gun. I don't think you need a custom anything. I think you can do it with a reliable rifle and a decent scope and some good ammunition. Right now, I am pretty set on using the 147 grain ELDMs, caliber 6.5 PRC. I've been shooting the ELDX for years. They have always worked flawlessly for me. I've never had an issue with expansion. I've shot lots of stuff at sub 100 yards when theoretically that bullet should have been going too fast to work. Now, it was a 30 caliber. It was my 300 PRC, and it's a 212 grain arrow. So I'm willing to admit that just the sheer size of the projectile may have played a role. But again, the philosophy I'm going into this year is large for caliber, highly fragmenting bullets shot out of a gun with a limited amount of recoil, so that I can prioritize shot placement over everything else. While I'm on this topic, I'm also shooting a mechanical broadhead this year. So far, I'm pretty set on the Sever 1.5 hybrid. And again, I'm doing that to prioritize shot placement over everything else. I want my arrow going exactly where it needs to go. And if I do that, a mechanical is more than capable of doing what I need it to do to the animal. So that's the theory for this year. I'm going to embrace that theory. And again, we will go over the data and the evidence at the end of the year. So I think that's all the components. Who knows? Time to start a pro suppressor lobby group in Canada. Hope in hell or wishful thinking. Something like Hunters for Hearing Safety, like they are trying to pass down south to regulate them. I think that's a phenomenal idea. I think in our quasi communistic liberal government that we currently have, you're pissing in the wind. So until we have a new government, I'm just focused on not losing any more rights. I think the idea of us getting more gun rights is a little bit unlikely at this point. Somebody asked what I was thinking about stabilizers. Always already answered that. Why you chose what rifle caliber over other options? So I had a 300 PRC, a 300 Win Mag, and a 308 over the last 8 years. I'm a big guy. Recoil doesn't bother me. I don't flinch when I shoot, but if you look at the data, a large caliber, especially a large caliber rifle, there is recoil that affects the barrel before the bullet leaves the barrel. This like old FUD thinking or philosophy that like as long as you don't flinch, the bullet will go where you want. Not true. That bullet, you can watch hyper slow-mo footage. That barrel moves before the bullet leaves the barrel. Now, if you are an excellent shot and you can replicate that barrel movement perfectly every single time, then you can put 30 caliber bullets exactly where they need to go downrange. If you're a really good shot, I will not argue that. However, I would say I'm a moderate shot at this point. I am not a phenomenal shot. And I think you need to be a phenomenal shot to reliably shoot large caliber bullets. And so, as I mentioned before, I wanted a large for caliber bullet in a lighter recoil caliber. And I would like to at some point build a 6UM. And so the reason I've gone with the 6 PRC instead of the 6.5 PRC instead of the 6.5 Creed is that there's a magnum bolt face on the Tikka action so that I can use that action in the future to build a 6UM if that's the path that I chose. And even though the 6.5 PRC does have a little bit more recoil than the 6.5 Creed, because given what I just told you, somebody's first question would be, well, then why not shoot the 6.5 Creed? It has less recoil, still has highly fragmented large for caliber bullets. And the reason is you get a couple hundred extra feet per second out of the 6.5 PRC. So if I want like a lethal range of like 800 yards, you're better off with a 6.5 PRC and a little bit more recoil. Put a brake on your gun, use a good recoil pad. You can get that kind of back down to where a 6.5 Creed would have been anyways. So that's the rationale for the 6.5 PRC. Where did you get your unknown musicians break and upgrades planned for the rifle eventually? I got it directly from Unknown Munitions. Ryan was super great and sent me a break and he sent me rings. I wanted the Unknown Munitions Tikka rings. I didn't want to put a pick rail on my Tikka. I just wanted to directly mount it. So I'll review both of those once they get in here, and I'll put it up against the Fierce and see how it looks. I'm trying to think. I would like at some point to swap out the stock, but that's like phase 2. Like if there's going to be 3 phases of the rifle, phase 1 is bone stock, except for threading the barrel and putting on a brake. Phase 2 would be replacing the stock. And then phase 3 would be using the action to build a custom rifle, like putting a new barrel on it. And maybe at that point, I literally just put a pre-fit on the action and use a new stock. And that's my version of an at-home custom rifle. I don't know. But that's kind of like the projected path. And then my buddy asks me if I'm going to use the ultralight bolt throw handle from MTN Gear. Yeah, quite possible. Again, I'm not targeting ultralight, so I don't really care about skeletonizing my action. I don't really care about skeletonizing my bolt handle. If these are things that you want to focus on as a shooter, have at her. I think I'm going to shoot better with a heavier rifle, so I'm not in any rush to make it as light as humanly possible. Will you be installing a carbon barrel? If so, have you checked out International Barrels? I will not be installing a carbon barrel. After my experience with the Fierce, and after listening to a bunch of carbon barrel related podcasts, I am not particularly enamored with them. Based on my experience and research up to this point, I have a really hard time finding any argument for a carbon barrel other than aesthetics. They don't weigh any less. They don't shoot any better. They're more temperamental with heat. They take longer to cool down. And they are less reliable. Like if you go take 500 steel barrels from a variety of manufacturers and 500 carbon fiber barrels from manufacturers, I guarantee you will have more consistent steel barrels than carbon fiber barrels. Now, if you take your time and find the perfect carbon fiber barrel, sure. But it's like, so after recognizing all that, like, what's the point? You know, the point is to look like you have a really expensive gun. So you put this like big fat carbon fiber barrel. It's the reason I bought the Fierce. It was sexy. That's the only reason I bought the Fierce. It doesn't do anything a Tikka doesn't do. And so, yeah, I see no need whatsoever. When I do get to the point where I need to replace the barrel on the Tikka, if I do anything, I want a spiral fluted barrel. And maybe in some, like if we're really going to go crazy, maybe in some type of like contrast paint scheme where the fluting is like painted one color and then the steel in the non-fluted parts is not painted, or, you know, something cool looking like that. I think a spiral fluted barrel looks phenomenal. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on carbon fiber barrels. I don't get it. Based on everything I've read. Do you use a bipod? If so, what kind and why? Do you use a sling system? I just did a bipod review. You can go look at it on my YouTube channel. I really liked the Gunworks Elevate. My second choice, and the one I'm leaning to a little more now as a backup, would be the Mountain Gear MTN Gear bipod. I actually had my Gunworks bipod fall off twice while I was on my winter goat hunt. It was locked on, there was nothing wrong with it. And then just from like, listen, like the perfect storm has to happen where you press in that little button, and while the button is pressed in, a branch grabs the two legs and twists, and then it can just fall off. But it fell off twice. And luckily we found it on the walk out, and that kind of eroded a little bit of my faith in that system. I'm willing to take responsibility for my part in that. You know, it's pretty crazy where we were hiking and stuff. I don't think it's a flawed system per se, but yeah, I think if you can't go wrong with either of those bipods. But again, this year I think I'm going to be using more of a tripod than a bipod. Listen, that Gunworks bipod is like 12 ounces. The Ridgeline tripod is 21 ounces. It's only 9 ounces different. And you have way more versatility and stability with a tripod than a bipod. It takes a little bit longer to set up. But if you're in a rush, then throw your rifle on a backpack. And if the shot is so complicated that that's not going to be good enough, then you shouldn't be rushing the shot. Take your time, put it on a tripod, shoot it the way you want to shoot it. And so that's my plan for this year. And a sling system. I used to use the Kafaru gun bearer a lot, but I don't like the way that it weights my pack to one side. So now I use the EXO quick release system. My shoulder flexibility is too garbage to actually use the quick release system, but I like where it places my rifle, like as far as height and everything goes. Would love to hear more about your overall plan to improve your long distance shooting. I mean, essentially it boils down to the shoot to hunt curriculum. I am just going to do what I'm told. So as far as like following their practice drills, you know, doing the assignments that they recommend, and then going to the course. I mean, you shoot 1,000 rounds over the course of a week. I've never shot 1,000 rounds. I've probably realistically shot 400 rounds my whole life. And I've probably shot 200 of those this year when I decided to really get into shooting my 300 PRC and trying to get better at it. And so I think just sheer volume of training, following some kind of professional curriculum, and then having regular practice and willing to have my beliefs modified. Like I'm going into this with a completely open mind. I think you have to pick some principles, like whoever you want to follow, whatever expert aligns most closely with your belief system. This is a lot of the problem I see in the hunting space, that people like nitpick. Oh, I want to listen to this part from this guy and this part from that guy and this part from this guy before they're really an expert themselves. And what happens is they're not embracing an entire system. So none of the bits work for them. And so I think you just got to pick a guy, follow the system, and then once you get good enough and you have enough experience, then you can kind of back out and decide, like, what rules do I want to start breaking? What things work for me about this? What things don't? I feel like I have my release system down like that. Like I said earlier, I really like Joel Turner's system. I don't do everything like Joel anymore. There's a couple things that just weren't quite right for me and just didn't really work. But I've been shooting that system for over 5 years. I've done all the online curriculum. I went down and had a full half day seminar with him in person at his house. I've talked to him a lot online. I've had him on the podcast. I've spent 5 years of my life working on my release system. And so now it's like my system. It's predominantly influenced by Joel, but I've put my own spin on it. That's what I plan to do with my long range system. For now, just follow the gospel of shoot to hunt. Then, when I'm experienced enough, I can decide what works for me, what doesn't, and what I want to keep and what I want to throw away. Poundage let off for your bow for elk. Also, how do I not look like a noob for my first elk hunt? 75 pounds, 85% let off. That's my bow for every single animal. I don't believe in animal specific setups. I believe get a system, be reliable with it, kill everything with it. You're better off spending your time doing other things to get you more proficient than you are tinkering around setting up multiple different setups. Now, how do you not look like a noob for your first elk hunt? You stop worrying about looking like a noob, because you're going to anyway, because you know what? You are a noob, and it's okay to be a noob. I think that's the problem, is that like everybody wants to step out and be Ryan Lampers on the first hunt they go on. And that was a big problem I had. I wasn't willing to ask for enough help. I was about to say I didn't want to look stupid, but if you've watched any of my videos, you would know that I am not afraid of looking stupid. And I put a whole bunch of embarrassing shit in my videos over the years, because I believe in transparency. And I think that's the only way I can learn and help the people who, consume my content learn. But don't stress about it, man. If you really love hunting, this is a lifelong journey. You don't have to go out and kill your first hunt. Focus on the small wins. Like, is it going to be a bivvy hunt? Is this your first time doing some kind of backcountry stuff? Can you get more comfortable with your gear? Can you get in the red zone a couple times? Can you actually get your first couple bugle replies? Like, there are so many things to worry about to become a consistent killer. The idea of doing all that on your first year, and listen, it happens, but you know what? People win the lottery too. A broken clock is right twice a day. Like, shit just randomly happens. And I think because the internet and social media, you see these guys who are like, I followed this influencer and I was successful on my first hunt. And it's like, dude, right place, right time. You could have followed no influencer and would have been successful on your first hunt. Shit happens. I think embracing it as a lifelong journey and being like, what's the priority for me this year? Okay, that's what I'm going to focus on. Listen, if I get in the red zone and I can stick in an arrow in an elk, fantastic. That's amazing. But maybe that's not the most important thing out of this hunt. It's kind of like this practice that I'm talking about. I don't just go out and start shooting arrows at 100 yards. I just don't go out and start shooting bullets at 1,000 yards at a gong. I shoot a Vegas face at 20 yards for a few weeks. I get comfortable. I build up my system. I test things. I learn. I then go out a little bit further. I test more. I learn more. Hunting is the same way. Focus on the things that matter first. There are other guys who are better suited to give you elk hunting information. I think my favorite overall is probably Cliff Gray. I think there's a bunch of other guys. I think Joel is great. I think Mark Livesey is great. I'm trying to think of, A lot of the other guys, they're like a little bit too flashy for me, and they're kind of like a little haphazard with how eager they are to accept new sponsorships. And it's kind of like, you're not my cup of tea, so I'm not going to recommend anybody else. There are other guys, though, that I respect. Their names just aren't coming to me right now. But like, find a couple guys that you like and follow them. And again, just like with the Dirk Durham is another guy I really like, especially because he's hunted a lot in northern Idaho. So for a BC guy like myself, he gets, what the challenges are in a place like BC where the timber is thick and the bulls aren't super vocal and all that kind of stuff. So find one or two guys and just follow them and listen to them and do whatever they tell you to do this year. Listen, when you got 5 dead elk under your belt, you can decide to like listen to this from Joel and listen to that from Cliff and listen to that from Dirk. But for now, simplify things. Focus on what matters. Pick one or two guys, follow their philosophies, and you will be much more successful. Because here's the deal: all the systems work. There's no magic recipe. The magic is consistency. And so focus more on one methodology executed extraordinarily well than wasting your time exploring multiple methodologies. That goes for calling systems. That goes for, hunting strategies. That goes for gear selection. That goes for shooting methodologies. It goes for everything. Keep it simple and be consistent, and you will be much more successful much quicker. Hand loads or factory pre-rolled ammo, overall weight, ARCA to attach, rifle to tripod, worth the pounds. So I am using factory ammunition this year. And the reason that I'm doing that is because, again, I want to prove and I want to show people a roadmap on how a regular dude with a couple of grand, rifle about $1,000, scope about $1,000, and some factory ammo with enough practice. The one part that I might have to throw into this is you might need a second gun for practice to keep things affordable. And I know that sounds weird, but for instance, Ryan's lending me his 223 for the shoot to hunt course. And he told me what ammo to go and buy. And you can get like bulk 223 target ammo for like $500 for 1,000 rounds. You ain't doing that with 6.5 PRC, and you're going to blow your barrel out shooting that many rounds. So maybe another part of that system is going to be a smaller caliber practice rifle. I might choose to add that in, but I want to prove that you can do this with factory ammo and you don't need to hand load, because I think it's just more complexity, more investment. And again, it's something else. It's a rabbit hole you don't need to dive down. Like if you're not incredibly proficient at building arrows, just buy pre-made arrows. Black Ovis has a great system. That DCA Custom Arrows has a great system. There are a ton of websites that you can. I think Podium Archer has a great system. You just go on, pick your components, he builds them for you, done. You're going to save money. You're going to save time. You're going to get them built by a professional. Yeah, your ego might take a hit because like, I didn't build my own arrows. But it's like, what's important to you? Becoming a better shot and killing more shit, or telling everybody you built your own arrows, or you have X amount of grains in your super exotic caliber. And like, these are all just like red herrings that do not functionally add to your ability to kill. The caveat being, if you are an expert and you've done this for many years and you're looking to squeeze out an extra 1 to 2% performance, then fine. Tinker until your heart's content, because you have your basics solidified. But if you don't have your basics solidified, don't worry about all that fluffy nonsense. Worry about the basics. Now, my long-term plan is to 100% hand load, but that's like a next year or the year after type of plan, much like customizing the rifle. Now, I build all my own arrow stuff. I build my own bows. I build my own arrows. I do my own setups because I've been doing that for almost 7 years now. And I understand that much deeper than I understand the rifle game. So I've got the experience and the bandwidth to do that. And I like doing it. Broadhead choices per animal. No broadhead choices per animal. This year, I am committing to a Sever 1.5 hybrid, and I'll kill everything that I shoot with that. What grain is the arrow? Said it before, 450 grains, all in. What process did you go through to select a caliber? Same question for bullets. I've already answered both of those. What do you feel is the ideal overall weight for a mountain rifle to balance recoil and carry weight? I think 8 to 9 pounds. I think more can provide a better shot, but I don't know if it's super necessary, especially if you're getting into a reasonable caliber like a 6.5 PRC, anything less than 6.5. Maybe you start to get to 7 mil and up. And I think maybe a little bit more weight could do you better. Again, if you're an expert, I think you can get away with a slightly lighter rifle. But for you intermediate shooters, I think 8.5 to 9 pounds is a great target weight. Like, I mean, can we actually have a conversation about this? Are you trying to tell me that there's some kind of functional difference between carrying a 7.5 pound rifle and a 9 pound rifle? It's a pound and a half. Go for a run, lose a pound and a half. Do you know how easy that is? I can do that in a day. Why are we sacrificing shot performance for something like a pound? That just seems ridiculous to me. If you look at all the useless shit that you have in your backpack that you could take out and save a pound and a half, or buy some slightly more expensive stuff, buy a better shelter, save a pound there. It seems so ludicrous to me. People like to focus on what they can control because it reduces anxiety. So they think if I've got a super light rifle, I'm going to be able to carry it up the hill and kill a bunch of shit. And it's like, well, not when your shot's bouncing all over the place because your rifle weighs 5.5 pounds. It just doesn't make any sense to me. What is your max shot distance and how did you determine what you feel is ethical? So my goal is that by the beginning of the hunting season, like my hunting season, I'm going to be outfitting bear. Bear season opens here in 10 days. So I'm going to start to scout. And if I see a tank while I'm scouting, not in my unit, I'm not going to kill a bear in my own unit, but I have to go through other areas to get to my area. And if I see some tank, I'm dropping it. But my real season starts August 1st. And by August 1st, I want to be extremely comfortable to 600 yards. That's the goal. In variety of conditions, in a variety of shooting setups, different weather, different angles, everything, different wind situations. I want to be a 600-yard killer. Like if I see something 600 yards and in, I want to say to myself, that is dead. I just need to do what I know how to do and execute the system that I've built or will build over the next 3 to 4 months. Thoughts on current archery site market and prices? I think this is a phenomenal question. And let's have this conversation about all gear. I was looking at a Samaya tent the other day. It's a 4-season winter shelter, weighs 810 grams, and it costs $2,300 US. Like just outrageous. Those new UltraView arrows are insane. The dialed sight, the UltraView sight. I mean, some of these things, man, are just, here's the deal, man. I'll say it about optics too. If you have a shit ton of money and you want to have the absolute best stuff, then go buy nice stuff. I know I did. However, after doing this for as long as I've been doing it and looking through as much glass as I have and using as much gear as I have, it doesn't matter. Like you can go put like I don't even know what a rock bottom sight would be. Like there's black golds that are like $250. There's sights that are even cheaper than that. Maybe they're not quite as durable. Like you don't want to go rock bottom, but like your proficiency with your weapon is not based on how expensive it was. It's based on how often and how well you use it. And so, yeah, I think it's cool that we live in a time where there is enough demand that people can put out ultra premium products because I love the dedication to perfection. However, the drawback of that is this sense of inferiority that seems to create in some of the public. Because like, I don't have $900 for a proof sight. I don't have $600 for that release. I can't buy $50 arrows. I mean, yeah. So I like that it's out there, but you don't need it. And in fact, I am fully committing to this right here, right now, because I've actually talked about it on 2 different podcasts this week alone. I am going to do an Amazon hunt this year. I'm going to do at least 3 days in the backcountry, and everything that I take with me, probably except for my weapon, because it's Canada and we can't buy weapons on Amazon, is going to be off Amazon. I'm going to do my apparel off Amazon. I'm going to do my shelter. I'm going to do my food, literally everything. And I want to know from you guys, like, what should be my budget? I think $1,000 is fair. I think I should be able to go do a 3-day backcountry hunt. I'm only saying 3 days because, to be honest with you, my schedule's pretty full and I don't know where I'm supposed to fit this in. But let's say a 3 to 5 day backcountry hunt for 1,000 Canadian dollars. That's like $600 American. And I will buy everything that I use for that hunt. My stove, my everything. Even the optics. You know what? Even the optics I will put in there. Maybe I can't get those off Amazon, but I've got those C-Ray optics. And maybe it might be tough to hit $1,000 if I do that. So let's play with this number a little bit. But we're going to do an Amazon backcountry hunt where I do ultra budget gear for everything. And I really don't think it's going to be that challenging. And I'm going to do that to prove you don't need all this fancy shit. Are your setups animal specific or general? They are general. The bullet I use is for every animal I'm shooting it at. The arrows that I use are for every animal that I shoot it at. I do not think you need different setups. Again, if you have disposable income, if you are already extremely experienced, you want a couple different guns, fine. If you want a couple different arrow setups, that's fine too. But you better be like a James Yates type of guy, like an absolute killer. If you're not him, you have a hard time convincing me you need 2 different arrow setups. It's like, just go worry about killing some shit first, then worry about having 2 different arrow setups. Are you going to do a load development? Yes, but not this year. Horizontal or vertical pins? How do I describe this? I guess they're horizontal. I like my pins to come in from the side. I understand having the more clear sight picture, having them come up from the bottom. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think most of those are fixed. And so depending on the speed of your bow, you could have like a 20-yard pin and a 34-yard pin. And I like to be able to move each of my pins. And they've got those, like, the pin arms are so slight now. It's like, it doesn't really obscure my vision. And I don't like the idea of this thing coming up from the middle of my scope. So yeah, I guess horizontal pins. All the rest of these questions: why did you choose the components? How do you decide what caliber? Why did you decide the rifle? Any intention on starting to hand load? Tips for someone getting into elk, deer, archery, blah, blah, blah. Like, these are all questions that we've asked. I hope like a consistent philosophy has been communicated throughout this podcast. I've been doing this a while now, and I've come full circle on a lot of things. And I've done that because of the experience that I've had, both the successes and the failures. And if you don't want to listen to me and you want to go out and make your own mistakes, I salute you, because that's what I had to do. So and I'm not saying that to be facetious. Legitimately, I support you. And if you still have any questions and you want to do different stuff, have at her. Like, I think that's great. I wish more people that emailed or DM'd me and asked for advice were willing to be a little bit more experimental on their own. Like, if you don't know which pair of pants, go buy them both. Go run them. See which one works better for you. But the consistent philosophy I'm trying to get across here is, like, back to the basics. Don't get distracted by the flashy. That could be fitness training programs. That could be different arrow setups and different online courses and like all this kind of stuff. Find a couple guys that speak to you, that when you look at them and you listen to them, it's like, I trust that guy. Like, I know Cliff Gray. I've had multiple, a dude called me out of the blue the other day, like 3-4 days ago, just to have a conversation. Like, Cliff Gray is an honest, authentic guy who gives a shit about people being more successful in the woods. And he's guided hundreds of archery elk hunters. Like, I have no problem telling people like he knows more about killing elk now than I probably ever will. And so it's like Ryan Avery is another guy. I talk to him a lot. Ryan Avery is someone when you speak to him, you what you see is what you get. Like there's no bullshit in that guy. I was just on the Hunt Backcountry podcast with Mark and Steve yesterday. I don't know when it's going to be released. But one of the questions that they had that like a user submitted was like, who do you look up to in the hunting industry? And all of us kind of had this like epiphany that because we all focus on having a lot of integrity and not being biased or sponsored, we all tend to get a little cynical about the industry because you look around and like everybody is just marketing bullshit everywhere and people taking whatever sponsored deal is offered at the time and guys switching clothing brands 4 times in a year and a half. And it's just like, you guys are just so full of shit. And it's so hard to get disheartened that all of us had to be honest with ourselves and be like, I don't think we spend enough time elevating the people in the industry who contribute with honesty and integrity and authenticity. So guys like Cliff, guys like Ryan, guys like Joel Turner, guys like Mark, guys like Steve, James Yates is another one. Like these are guys who have proven success over years and decades, know what they're talking about. They're honest, they're genuine, and they give a shit about you. They care more about your success than signing some deal with some brand. So like find and listen, maybe none of the guys that I just mentioned resonate with you. Maybe other people resonate with you. Find whoever it is that resonates with you and follow them. Listen to them. Take their advice and don't worry about following 50 different people. I guarantee you will get better faster. Like, and then once you've built your base, you can go out and start, it's like a musician. I wrote music for years. You need to learn the scales before you learn the rules that you can break. If you just sit down at a piano and start smashing the keys, it's going to sound like garbage. You need to learn the fundamentals. Then you can get creative and explore jazz and do like all the weird stuff that like experts and professionals do. Hunting is the same way. Learn the basics. Keep it simple. Consistency kills. And this is the mantra. Like I have never been as motivated for a hunting season as I am right now. And I talked about my goals on the last podcast. Like I will be successful this year. I have no doubt whatsoever. And the reason I have no doubt is that I have a better plan and I'm more committed to that plan. And I've already made the sacrifices necessary to execute that plan. I've got the time booked for scouting. I've got the time booked for practice. My business has got to a point where I have enough money that I have this freedom in other areas where I can do this stuff. And it's like, dude, I am fired up. I wish I could give the level of motivation I have right now for hunting to every single person listening to this, because it's like I said, I have never been this fired up, and not just in like an ethereal, I can't wait for the season. It's exciting. It's like, no, John Danaher said that confidence comes from stacking up a set of undeniable evidence that you are successful. Okay, he's one of the best BJJ coaches in history, arguably the best. Coaches Gordon Ryan. Gordon is a monster. The reason Gordon is as confident as he is because he's stacked up a set of undeniable evidence. He smashes everybody. And that's why I feel the way that I do about this year, because I know that I'm doing what it's going to take to be successful. And I'm going to stack up that set of undeniable evidence through my practice. I'm going to get my shooting where I can hit 4-inch steel at 600 yards with my eyes closed. I'm going to hit, 100-yard targets with my bow at steep downward angles, without issue. And it's like, it's not magical thinking that's going to get me to those places. It is like a brutal commitment to the practice and the execution required to get there. And it's like, I'm sick and tired of mediocre results. So this is the year. There is no mediocrity. You know, I'm it's success or death. You know, I know that sounds kind of severe, but it's just like, yeah, man. Anyways, I'm ranting and doing my thing. I can tell my head cold is kind of getting to me now. If anybody's watching the video, you'll notice I went from a hoodie to a t-shirt because I started getting these hot sweats. So maybe half of this podcast was a fever rant. I don't know, but I've never been as grateful as I am right now. And I think after having the struggles that I did in 24 to start 25 with the successes that I have and to have such a clear picture of what it is I need to do to achieve what I want to achieve, I'm just so fired up. So I hope you guys feel the same way about the year you have coming up, no matter what your plans are. I hope you are as eager and as filled with anticipation as I am. Like that's how we should approach life. It should be like this fulfilling, beautiful thing that you just can't get enough of. Um, yeah, man. Anyways, quick reminder, Forged 2025 drop is live. The new boxers, the new hat, the new t-shirts, the old hats. Every $5 you spend at forgedinthebackcountry.com will get you one entry to win a Swarovski 85 millimeter spotting scope, the ATX. I have a couple spots left for bear. I have 1 week available for 2 dudes at the end of the season, and I could squeeze in 2 more single dudes or girls with another guide, and we'd all be in the same camp together. So we'd still be hunting together and hanging out and all that good stuff. So, and then I've got 4 spots for mule deer, any hunting related information, Jay at mindfulhunter.com. And then anyone who goes to mindful-reviews.com and joins up between now and April 30th will be automatically entered to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. Honestly and sincerely, thank you. If you listen to this podcast, even if we've never chatted, if you've never reached out, if you've never clicked like, just the fact that you download this helps me. And nothing that I do in my life right now would be possible if it weren't for the people who support me and consume my content. And I am sincerely grateful for that help and support. And I need you to know that I do not take that lightly. Like when I do things like release the boxers, or when I do things like decide I'm going to get into outfitting, I do not take that lightly. The trust that you guys put in me by either buying a product that I'm selling or coming on one of my hunts, like I will do everything possible in order to make sure that you have the best experience possible, whether that's in a product, on a hunt, whatever. I take that very seriously. So there you have it, man. Another podcast episode in the books. So I hope everybody has a fantastic day. I know I'm a little bit late getting this one out. It's now 6:40. So we crushed almost 2 hours. That was crazy. Hour and a half. I got to go get my kid up and get her ready for school. All right. As always, thank you for tuning in.